Hello and welcome, dear listener, to another gentle journey with the Sleepy Theorist. Wherever you are in the world, whether nestled beneath blankets, gazing softly at the ceiling, or simply letting your breath slow, I'm glad you're here. Tonight, we begin in the presence of giants. The mountains, those towering silhouettes stitched into the sky, have always inspired awe. We see their snow-touched peaks, their ridges like wrinkles in the earth's skin, their shadows stretching for miles. We think of them as unshakable, solid, immovable, but tonight, we will look more closely, because even the mightiest mountains are not as still as they seem. Beneath their stony grandeur is a quiet transformation, patient, invisible, and constant. The architects of this change do not shout. They do not strike. They wear no tools on their backs. Instead, they arrive with a whisper, a breeze, a drop of rain, a gentle freeze. And over centuries, they reshape the world. They are erosion's artists, carving, smoothing, rearranging. They work slowly, kindly reminding us that not all change must come in force. Some comes in softness. Tonight, we'll explore this hidden craft, the gentle art of erosion. We'll journey with wind across sandstone cliffs. We'll watch rivers cut valleys over millennia. We'll drift with glaciers, glide through rainstorms, and slip between grains of soil as the planet quietly reshapes itself. This is not a story of destruction. It's a story of balance, of how mountains rise only to be gently softened, of how rivers carve but also cradle, of how nature builds, unbuilds, and rebuilds again. So, take a deep breath in and let it out slowly. Let your thoughts settle like dust on stone. Let your body rest like a boulder nestled in the hillside, and know that tonight, as you drift gently towards sleep, you're in the company of slow, sacred change. Before a mountain can be worn down, it must first be raised up. Tonight, as you rest, I invite you to journey even deeper into the earth's past long before erosion began its quiet work. Let us visit the birthplace of mountains, where slow collisions and ancient forces shape the land in ways we rarely see, but always feel. The story begins not on the surface, but deep within the earth, beneath the soil, beneath the stone, beneath even the crust itself. Here, far below your feet, the planet is alive with heat and motion. Earth's outer shell, the crust, floats on a deeper sea of semi-molten rock called the mantle. And though we cannot hear it, these giant plates of land are constantly moving, pressing against one another, sliding past, or drifting apart. This slow motion is called plate tectonics, and it is one of the great sculptors of our planet. Sometimes, when two plates meet, one may buckle, fold, and rise. Imagine a rug being pushed slowly across a wooden floor. Wrinkles rise where pressure builds. The crust behaves the same way. Rock, once deep underground, is lifted up toward the sky. Over millions of years, these folds grow taller, sharper, more dramatic. This is orogenity, grand geological term for the birth of mountains. Mountains can be born in many ways. In places like the Himalayas, India's continental plate pushes into Asia, raising Everest and its neighbors skyward. In the Andes, a heavier ocean plate slides beneath a lighter land plate, crumpling the edge of South America into a chain of peaks. Some mountains rise from volcanic fire, like those in the Pacific Ring of Fire. Others are fault block mountains, cracked and tilted, shaped by tectonic tension. But no matter how they begin, all mountains share something in common. They are built slowly, painstakingly, and with great pressure. Stone is not quick to rise. It does not leap from the ground like a plant. It endures heat, it bears weight, and yet it moves, lifted millimeter by millimeter, year by year, until a plain becomes a plateau, until a plateau becomes a peak. If you've ever stood at the base of a mountain, you may have felt it, that sense of time made solid. Rock that once lay flat now stretches into the clouds, and inside each layer of stone is a memory of seas that dried up, forests that turned to coal, creatures that once walked where now only goats and wind remain. A mountain is a monument not just to power, but to patience. But even as they rise, mountains begin to change. For the moment they touch the air, a quieter force begins to answer. The wind whispers, the rain arrives, temperatures swing, ice forms in cracks. This is where erosion begins. Not with violence, but with contrast. The mountain, you see, is made by forces from below, but it is softened by forces from above. Uplift and erosion are dance partners, pushing and pulling, building and wearing, sculpting together over the ages. The height of a mountain is not just a measure of uplift, it is also a measure of time. Time since it rose, time since it began to fade. The peaks you see now are both ancient and fleeting. They are in motion, even when they seem still. Consider the Appalachians. Today, they roll gently across the eastern United States, covered in trees and softened by age. But long ago, they stood tall and sharp, rivaling the Alps. Hundreds of millions of years of wind, rain, frost, and roots have carved them into the rounded hills we know today. Their stories are still written in the rocks, but their grandeur has been smoothed by time. Meanwhile, in places like the Himalayas or the Andes, uplift still outpaces erosion. These mountains are young geologically speaking, still sharp, still raw, still rising, and so the earth continues its slow breathing. Plates move, crust folds, volcanoes rise, mountains are born. Tonight, as you lie still, remember, the land beneath you is not still at all. It shifts with every passing year. It remembers the pressure of ancient seas, the crack of cooling lava, the rise and fall of continents. It may feel solid, but it is always in motion, so breathe in and breathe out. Feel the weight of your own body solid, grounded, and let yourself drift. As the planet beneath you hums with the quiet strength of stone being born, the story of erosion is about to begin. But to understand what is worn away, we must first honor what was built. You have now met the mountains. Let us begin to follow the wind. As the mountain rises, a new artist arrives. It does not roar, it does not strike, it simply whispers. The wind. We often think of wind as something fleeting, a breeze across the cheek, the rustle of leaves, a gust that touzles your hair. It feels soft, harmless, and yet wind is one of the earth's most tireless sculptor, subtle, invisible, but always at work while you sleep. While the rocks stand still, wind flows over the surface of the earth. It sweeps across deserts, glides through valleys, curls around cliff edges, and though a single breath of it may do nothing, wind never comes just once. It returns, again and again, always moving, always shaping. Wind erosion is the art of persistence. The physics of a whisper wind begins with heat. When sunlight warms, parts of the earth, unevenly mountaintops, oceans, valleys, the air above those regions heats and rises. Cooler air rushes in to take its place, and so begins the flow. What starts as a temperature imbalance becomes movement. What feels like chaos is actually a pattern. a breath of the planet. As this air moves, it picks things up: tiny grains of sand, flakes of soil, dust from ancient rocks. These particles become tools in the wind's hands. They don't just float, they strike, they scrape, they polish and chip at the surfaces they touch. This is known as abrasion, a kind of natural sandblasting. Over time, wind can smooth a boulder, etch lines into a canyon wall, or hollow out entire arches of stone. Even mighty mountains feel the wear of these countless tiny touches. And the smaller the particle, the farther it can go. Dust from the Sahara Desert, lifted by wind, can cross oceans riding high above the clouds, falling later as a fine layer on distant lands. In this way, wind doesn't just sculpt, it transports. It connects continents with invisible threads of sand, deserts. The wind's open studio. Nowhere is wind more dominant than in the desert. Picture it, vast, open space with little to slow the breeze. The sun bakes the surface. The air rises and falls in thermal waves. There are no forests to block the gusts, no rivers to anchor the soil, only dunes, stones, and sky. Here, wind becomes both painter and chisel. It moves sand in graceful waves, building dunes that drift over time. It scours rocks into strange shapes: mushroom-like spires, smooth pedestal stones, narrow ridges. In places like the Sahara, the Atacama, and the Gobi, these wind-sculpted landscapes look almost like frozen oceans, rippled, ridged, and silent. Wind can even polish surfaces into a mirror-like shine, forming desert varnish, a thin, dark coating of minerals left behind on rocks. It can strip soil from once fertile lands, creating barren stretches that shift with every season. And yet, for all its power, wind remains gentle in each moment. Its strength lies not in force, but in constancy. It returns, again and again, without end, the soundless carving of stone. Not all wind erosion happens where it is easy to see. High in the mountains, where the air is thin and the snow flies sideways, wind shapes alpine ridges into sharp, knife-like forms called arêtes. It smooths glaciers and sculpts frozen peaks. Even in icy landscapes, it never rests. In canyons and badlands, it echoes softly through narrow paths, slowly enlarging cracks, revealing new colors in stone that has not seen light in millions of years. Some of the most iconic natural structures on Earth owe their shapes to wind. The delicate arches of Utah, the spires of Cappadocia, the stone forests of China. These places were not built by hammers or machines, but by air and time. Living with the wind, and still, wind does not work alone. It partners with rain, with cold, with heat. A rock may be cracked by ice, loosened by heat, and carried away by wind. Over time, these forces blend together, each doing a little, until the land itself has been reshaped. Even life joins the equation. In deserts, small plants help hold soil together. When they disappear, the wind takes what remains. In human history, wind-blown soil has shaped the rise and fall of civilizations. The Dust Bowl of the 1930s in North America saw entire regions turned to drifting plains of dust due to a mix of drought and over-farming. An example of how our choices can give wind too much power. Yet wind is not our enemy, it is simply part of Earth's breath. A lesson in lightness, perhaps. What is most beautiful about wind as a sculptor is that it teaches us a new kind of strength. Not the kind that strikes hard and fast, but the kind that stays, that returns, that whispers and waits. To wear down a mountain, the wind does not roar. It flows across an ocean. It does not push, lifts to shape stone. It does not demand. It dances, tonight. As you drift toward sleep, imagine the wind above the highest peak, cool and light. Imagine it brushing gently against the stone, lifting a grain of sand, moving it just an inch. Nothing changes at first, but then the next day and the next. 1,000 years pass, then 10,000. A ridge is softened, a canyon forms, a sculpture emerges, and all from air. Closing the chapter. Wind beneath thoughts. Let your thoughts float now, as dust does in the breeze. Let each worry be lifted, each tension released. The same wind that carved canyons and polished cliffs can also calm a restless mind. It has shaped this earth and it can help shape your peace tonight. Breathe in gently, and breathe out. Even more softly, you are safe. The wind is outside, whispering across the hills, and your body, like the mountain, is being slowly softened by stillness. Rest now. The sculptor continues its work quietly, invisibly while you sleep. After the wind comes the water, more patient than the breeze, more persistent than the frost. Water is the most powerful sculptor on earth, gentle in a single drop, yet mighty in time. Tonight, as you sink into stillness, we'll follow the silent pathways of water as it slips, carves, and weaves its way through the land. A quiet stream, a falling raindrop, a snowflake that melts at dawn. These are not just moments in weather. They are part of a vast, unseen art. The earth's soft chisel, the painter of valleys, the architect of canyons. And like all great artists, water works without haste. The first drop it begins with rain. Imagine it, clouds heavy with vapor. The air hushes, then plinker droplet falls, then another, and another. A gentle rhythm begins. Rain falls across the slopes, hills, and cliffs of the mountains. It lands on stone, soil, moss, and leaf. Some of it sinks inward, disappearing into the ground to become groundwater, but much of it flows tiny streams, forming trickles becoming rivulets, and rivulets growing into brooks and rivers. Each droplet carries with it a hint of change. As the water moves, it picks up pieces of the world dust, grains of sand, bits of soil, tiny fragments of rock. It begins to wear at the surface beneath it. This is fluvial erosion water cutting the land. And over years, centuries, and ages, the path grows deeper, broader, until the land bears the memory of every rainfall. The making of a valley. Rivers are more than flowing water. They are sculptors with a memory. They return again and again to the same path. They carry stones that bounce and scrape against the riverbed. They flood, recede, meander, and change course. And with every turn, they shape the earth. Over time, a river carves a valley. Soft soils erode quickly. Harder rock resists, but only for a while. In places like the Grand Canyon, rivers have sliced through layers of stone, revealing the earth's geologic memory like pages in a book. Some valleys are broad and U-shaped, shaped by ancient glaciers. Others are narrow and V-shaped, cut by rivers that never rest. Water never forces, it simply returns. The invisible carver, even when we don't see it. Water works. Snow that piles up on mountaintops eventually melts. That meltwater flows beneath glaciers, under rocks, inside cracks. It freezes at night, expands, then melts again. A cycle called freeze-thaw, weathering. Every cycle widens the crack a little more. In time, entire cliffs can break apart, not in an instant, but in a quiet, crumbling rainwater. slightly acidic from absorbing carbon dioxide in the air, slowly dissolves certain rocks like limestone. This process, called chemical weathering, creates caves, sinkholes, and vast underground passageways. A single drop of acidic rain, falling in the same place for thousands of years, can hollow out entire caverns. A drip at a time. Water carves, above and below, seen and unseen, the dance of flow and flood. Not all water carves gently. Sometimes it comes all at once. Downpour, a storm, a flood. The river swells, the banks overflow, trees bend, the land is reshaped quickly, dramatically. But even here, in these moments of chaos, the principles are the same: erosion, deposition, movement, change. Floods don't just tear away, they also leave behind. They lay down fresh soil across floodplains, creating rich land for farming and forests. The same flood that removes can also restore. In this way, erosion is not destruction, it is transformation, a never-ending exchange between sky and stone. A global touch. Water's reach is everywhere in the tropics. Rain falls almost daily, soils are leached, lands reshaped. In the Arctic, frozen rivers etch lines in the tundra during brief summers. On steep mountain faces, waterfalls crash and tumble, constantly pulling fragments of rock with them. Even tiny raindrops on bare soil can loosen grains and start the process of erosion. From alpine peaks to desert wadis, water has shaped every corner of the earth, and though each droplet is small, together they form a force that moves continents. The sleep of water is powerful, but it also rests. Sometimes it gathers, still and quiet, in lakes and ponds. Sometimes it slips into the ground, becoming part of the underground rivers we explored in our last journey. Sometimes it hangs in the air as mist, as vapor, as the soft scent of rain to come. It teaches us that power and peace can coexist, that movement can be slow, that change need not shout. A final ripple before sleep. So, as you rest tonight, imagine the slow flow of water running over stones, slipping down mountainsides, collecting in hidden pools. Imagine the way it carves, not by force, but by patience, not by pressure, but by return. Every rain that falls leaves a mark. Every stream that winds through a valley is writing something into the land. Let that thought comfort you. Let it soften your breath, your shoulders, your thoughts. You do not need to rush, change will come. Like water, you are allowed to flow, to pause, to shape and be shaped. Tonight, let yourself be carried by the current of calm. Drift like a leaf in a stream, curl into stillness. Tomorrow, the rain will return. But for now, there is only peace. If water flows, then ice remembers. If rivers run, glaciers wait, and in that waiting, they shape the world. Tonight, we descend into the silence of ice, into frozen valleys, glimmering ridges, and blue shadows that stretch across the land. We step into a world where time slows, where the earth moves not in minutes, or even years, but in millennia. This is the realm of glaciers, nature's slowest and strongest sculptors, massive rivers of ice that slide across mountains and plains, reshaping everything they touch. So take a breath, let your body become still, and allow yourself to sink into the cool calm of deep time. A glacier begins with snow, snow that falls gently, flake by flake, year after year, in cold places on mountaintops, near the poles. This snow doesn't melt. Instead, it piles, compresses, fuses. Over time, the snowflakes lose their delicate shape, crushed under the weight of each new layer. What begins as soft powder becomes firm and then transforms into dense, glowing blue ice. It takes decades, even centuries, for this transformation, but eventually the glacier is born. Not in a rush, not in a roar, but in quiet compression. Though it seems solid and still, glacier ice flows. Under its own immense weight, it moves downhill slowly, endlessly. Sometimes just a few centimeters a day, sometimes meters, always following the pull of gravity, always seeking the sea. This flow is almost imperceptible, but its power is immense. Glaciers don't just move, they carry. They drag with them rock, soil, and debris. They scour the bedrock beneath, grinding it down like sandpaper. They flatten valleys, carve out basins, and sculpt mountains into jagged peaks and sharp ridges in cold silence. They shape the earth where rivers carve V-shaped valleys. Glaciers leave behind U-shaped ones, broad, flat, and deep. Picture Yosemite, with its wide valley floor and steep granite walls. That was once a riverbed until ice came and carved it anew. In Norway, the fjords are deep glacial valleys now filled with seawater, their steep sides plunging into the ocean like stone cathedrals. Moraines, ridges of rock and debris are left behind where glaciers once paused. Erratic's giant boulders, far from their home, sit alone on hillsides, carried and dropped by ice. The land tells its story through these traces, through lines and scars and placements that only glaciers could make. Today, many glaciers are shrinking, retreating, but their fingerprints remain. The places they once ruled are still marked by their quiet force. And beneath Antarctica and Greenland, glaciers still grind and groan, unseen that they flow beneath the weight of snow that has not melted in tens of thousands of years. These glaciers hold not just stone but stories. Tiny air bubbles, trapped within ancient ice, preserve a record of Earth's past atmosphere. Scientists study them like time capsules. Through ice, we read the story of Earth's changing climate, stretching back hundreds of thousands of years. The glacier is not just a sculpture, it is also a library. There's something profoundly restful about glaciers. Perhaps it is their pace, slow beyond imagination. Perhaps it's the hush that surrounds them, the way sound is muffled in snow, or maybe it's the reminder they give us that change need not be rushed, that even the coldest, quietest forces can create beauty. So tonight, let yourself imagine standing at the foot of a glacier. The air is crisp, the sky is quiet. Before you, a wall of ancient ice rises like a frozen river paused mid-flow. Beneath its surface, pale blue light glows, and though it looks still, it is moving. Ever so slowly, ever so surely. Ice does not announce itself. It arrives slowly. It sculpts patiently, and it departs quietly. But the valleys it leaves behind, the lakes it fills, the boulders it scatters, they remain. In the story of erosion, glaciers are the slow artists of shadow and light, of stillness and gravity, of patience so profound we can only begin to grasp it by closing our eyes. So do that now. Close your eyes. Imagine the glacier moving beneath the stars, beneath the silence, beneath time. The mountain gives way, the valley deepens, and you too can surrender to sleep, carried softly by the hush of frozen breath. Heat expands, cold contracts, and together they make the mountains breathe. Those stones seem so still, so unchanging beneath the sky. It is anything but lifeless. Beneath your feet, the rocks are always responding subtly, quietly, to the temperature of the world around them. It may take years to notice, centuries to see the change, but the process never stops. Day by day, season by season, the mountain inhales warmth and exhales cold, and in this rhythm, it begins to reshape itself. Imagine a granite cliff under the noon sun. The surface warms quickly, absorbing the heat of the day. The outer layers expand ever so slightly, pushed outward by thermal energy, but stone is dense, and heat does not travel quickly through it. The inner core of the rock remains cooler for much longer. This uneven warming creates tension. The outside wants to stretch. The inside wants to stay still. The rock holds its breath. Then night comes. The stars return, and the warmth slips away. Now the surface cools and contracts, while the inner stone lags behind, still holding on to a trace of the day. The tensions reverse. This constant cycle of expanding and shrinking, warming and cooling places stress upon the rock, a soft, persistent pressure that no hand applies, but that time never stops. This is called thermal weathering, and though it makes no sound, it has shaped entire landscapes. Over time, these internal tensions lead to cracks. Thin at first, hairline, fractures that barely touch the surface. But with every passing day, the cracks widen, deepen, stretch like tiny sighs through stone, and as they grow, they welcome other guests' wind water, ice age ready to help nature continue its work. Now, imagine these cycles repeating not just once, but thousands of times, tens of thousands. The mountain in summer blisters beneath the sun, the surface expands. In winter, it shrinks. In desert climates, where the difference between day and night is extreme, this expansion and contraction can be especially dramatic. Rocks flake, surfaces peel, boulders split. It's as if the stone itself is slowly turning pages, layers of its own history peeling away. This same process happens where frost joins the story. Picture a droplet of rain falling gently into one of those cracks. The day is warm. The rock breathes outward. The droplet seeps in. Then the temperature falls and the droplet freezes. Water, unlike most substances, expands when it turns to ice. And when it does, it pushes with incredible force. Even the hardest stone cannot resist the quiet power of frozen water. The crack widens. Next day, the ice melts and sinks deeper. Then it freezes again. This cycle, repeated over countless seasons, is called frost wedging, and it can split cliffs. It can crumble ridgelines. It can reduce great stone towers to rubble at their base. Mountains, though they seem so solid, are slowly undone by their own breathing, by the delicate interplay of heat and cold. And yet, for all this subtle power, there is no violence in it. It is simply nature's rhythm. The mountain sighs beneath the sun. It shivers under the stars, and in those breaths, it begins to reshape itself. Even plants join this patient effort. Seeds find shelter in the cracks formed by temperature shifts. They grow roots that press and stretch. They hold moisture. They create microclimates inside the rock. Mosses and lichens cling to stone, trapping warmth and drawing in dew. Together, life and temperature work hand in hand to wear the stone away, one breath at a time. Over thousands of years, entire slopes may soften and collapse, becoming scree-fields, piles of broken rock lying at the foot of cliffs. These fragments continue to expand and contract in the sun. They warm, they cool, they shift slightly with each season. A constant, whispering motion that never truly ends. Some landscapes are made almost entirely from this process. In certain mountain ranges, you can walk through valleys filled with the echoes of ancient cracking where every stone you step on was once part of something higher, harder, and more whole. But that is the way of the earth, to rise and then to release. And yet, as always, what is lost in one place becomes something new in another. The broken fragments of mountains become sediment, carried by rivers, blown by wind. They form the foundation for future hills, plains, and even distant coastlines. The breathing of the stone today becomes the soil of tomorrow. So while it may seem quiet, thermal erosion is a song that never stops. A song that plays across every continent, every peak and valley. It is the soundless cracking of morning frost, the soft expansion of a sun-warmed ledge, the sigh of stone under the night sky. Tonight, as you lie in the quiet of your own room, think of the earth breathing around you, the mountain warming under the dawn, the cliffside cooling under the moon, the world inhaling heat and exhaling cold in a cycle as old as the countenance. You may not feel it, you may not hear it, but this breath has shaped the world beneath your feet, and it will continue long after you've drifted into sleep. So breathe with it now, slowly, calmly. Breathe in the warmth of this moment, and breathe out the stillness of the stone. Let the quiet art of expansion and contraction lull you to rest. Like the mountains softening under the stars, the earth, even in its silence, is always changing, and in that there is peace. What rises must one day fall. It is not a punishment, nor a failure. It is simply the way of the world. And in the story of mountains, gravity is the quiet storyteller, the one who waits, patient and invisible, until the tale is ready to turn its page. Mountains seem eternal. They pierce the clouds, loom on the horizon, and feel ancient to our eyes. But they are not still. From the moment they begin to rise, pushed skyward by tectonic forces, they are already beginning to fall. Not in one great tumble, not with a crash, but slowly, relentlessly, piece by piece. A pebble here, a stone there, a ledge that loosens, a slope that slides. Gravity, ever present, ever downward, is the invisible hand behind it all. Imagine a high cliff, sharp-edged cold at its peak. The sun warms it by day, and frost chills it by night. Over the years, cracks appear, water seeps in, ice forms, heat swells, roots press, and then one day, after centuries of pressure, gravity whispers, now, and the stone falls. It may be smaller, single rock bouncing down the slope, or it may be a Mensa landslide, a rockfall, an entire face of the mountain shearing away in silence and dust. These events can happen suddenly or slowly. Some rocks fall in seconds, others creep, inching downward over decades, like slumbering rivers of stone. This is called mass wasting, a term geologists use for the downslope movement of soil, rock, and debris under the influence of gravity. It comes in many forms: falls, slides, flows, and creeps. Each is part of the mountain's long, slow surrender. Rockfalls are the most dramatic. Blocks of stone detaching from cliffs, tumbling down with speed and energy. The sound of it, when it comes, is thunderous, but the silence that leads up to it, that long build-up of stress and tensions where gravity does its quietest work. Then there are landslides, great sheets of rock and soil moving together, slipping along weak layers deep within the mountain, sometimes triggered by heavy rain, earthquakes, or melting snow. They are reminders that even the mightiest slopes rest on a delicate balance. Creep is slower, almost imperceptible. Soil on a hillside shifts just slightly with each freeze and thaw, with each wet season and dry spell. Trees begin to lean downslope, fence posts tilt, roads crack. It can take decades for the signs to appear, but they always do. The mountain is breathing out, letting go. Grain by grain, mud flows and debris flows are other kinds of mass movement, often sparked by storms or volcanic activity. When water saturates soil and mixes with loose rock, it forms a slurry, river of earth. These flows can rush down valleys, reshaping the landscape in minutes. But again, they are not chaos. They are the result of gravity pulling on a system that could no longer hold itself together. And yet, even in this falling, there is a kind of beauty, because nothing is wasted. The rocks that fall from cliffs become the pebbles in the stream. The landslides that sweep down slopes bring nutrients into valley soils. The sediments from ancient collapses may, one day, become part of new mountains, pressed and lifted by the same earth that let them fall. Gravity may pull, but it also gives. This is part of the great cycle of erosion, uplift and fall, rise and crumble. There is no beginning and no end, only change, and gravity, so quiet in your daily life, is always there beneath your feet, reminding every stone where home truly is, closer to the center, closer to rest. We feel gravity every day, in the weight of our bodies, in the gentle tug that brings rain to earth, leaves to ground, and rivers to sea. But on mountains, that pull is more dramatic, more patient. It waits through centuries of build-up, through storms and droughts, through the growth of forests and the passage of ice. And when the moment is right, gravity finishes what time has begun. It is not a force of destruction, it is a force of return. Think now of a tailless slope at the base of a cliff, a collection of broken rocks, rough and angular, lying like fallen memories. Each piece once stood higher, once reached for the sky, but now they rest. They are not lost, they are simply home again. And in time, they will become something else: soil, sand, sediment, a seedbed for mosses, a hiding place for snowmelt, a future folded into the earth's slow breath. This, too, is part of the mountain's life. It is not separate from its grandeur, it is part of its beauty, the strength to rise and the grace to fall. So as you close your eyes tonight, think of the mountain not as a symbol of permanence, but as a living, changing form. Think of the gravity that holds you too, that gentle pull toward rest, that invitation to let go. Let your breath soften, let your limbs grow heavy, like a rock settling into stillness. No need to resist, no need to rise tonight. Gravity is already carrying you, cradling you, holding you safe as the world turns, just as it holds the stone, the soil, the sleeping mountain. Let yourself fall not into fear, but into peace, into sleep, into rest, and know that even in stillness, you are part of this endless, beautiful falling. As the mountains exhale, the rivers begin their quiet work. Grains of sand, fragments of stone, specks of soil, these are the remnants of a world always in motion. Tiny pieces of peaks, slivers of time. Erosion doesn't end when a rock breaks or when a slope crumbles. In many ways, that is where the next journey begins. It is a journey through rivers, those patient, winding veins of the earth that carry the past into the future. Sediment is the language of this story. It is the silt clinging to your boots after a streamside walk, the clay that settles in quiet corners, the sand resting at the bottom of a riverbed. All of it once belonged to something larger, a cliff, a boulder, a mountain once proud and high, and now, broken down by water, wind, heat, and ice, it travels, slowly, steadily, downhill, always downhill. In rivers, sediment is carried by 3 quiet hands. Some grains roll and bounce along the bottom, a process called bed load. Heavier particles hop and skip, moved by the tug of water but still kissing the stone beneath. Finer grains, like silt and clay, stay suspended, floating in the water, turning it cloudy, giving rivers their distinct brown or green hue. And then there's dissolved lode minerals, like calcium or salts, invisible to the eye, flowing silently within the water itself. All of these, the seen and the unseen, are part of the river's story, and as they flow, they change the land they touch. Riverbanks shift, beds deepen, meanders stretch and bend. A stream that once cut straight now loops lazily through the valley. Over time, it carves oxbow lakes, abandoned curves of water that tell tales of former paths. The sediment follows, tracing every turn. When the river slows, it begins to drop its load. Near mouths and deltas, where fresh water meets the sea, sediment settles, grains come to rest. Deltas grow outward, fans of earth blossoming into oceans. The Nile, the Mississippi, the Ganges. These rivers have carried whole continents, grain by grain, quietly building new land from old. Floods play their part too. When rivers spill over their banks, they deposit layers of nutrient-rich silt across the surrounding plains. Over centuries, these floodplains become cradles of life, farmlands, wetlands, and forests. Places where sediment, having journeyed far, nourishes the next generation of growth. In this way, erosion is not just loss, it is renewal. Mountains become valleys, valleys become fields, and fields, in time, may rise again. The pieces never vanish. They move, they rest, they return. Sometimes, sediment travels not just across the surface, but deep into the earth. Buried by time, compressed by weight, it transforms. Sand becomes sandstone, clay becomes shale. Layers stack upon layers, each one a chapter in Earth's deep memory. Geologists read these layers like pages, deciphering past climates, ancient rivers, long-lost seas. In this quiet burial, sediment becomes rock again. What was once part of a mountain, worn down and swept away, may rise again in new form, uplifted by tectonic forces, reborn in distant lands. This is the rock cycle, a cycle without end. Weathering, erosion, transportation, deposition, burial, uplift, and again, even. Deserts bear witness to this journey. The dunes of the Sahara once lay beneath tropical forests and seas. The grains of sand, so fine and golden, may have come from ancient rivers that no longer flow. Each grain has a story, a journey that spans not just distance, but deep time. Sediment connects everything, mountains to oceans, rivers to roots, past to present, and as you lie here tonight, resting in your own stillness, the sediment still moves. Tiny fragments of stone are carried by moonlit rivers. Valleys shift their shape in the hush of midnight. Deltas grow, grain by grain, beneath the stars. This is erosion at its most delicate. Not a crash, not a fall, but a journey. A pebble becomes a grain becomes a particle, and the river carries it all, not with force, but with patience. Always forward, always homeward. In that motion there is peace. Let your thoughts drift now, like those grains in the stream. Let your breath follow the rhythm of the river, in and out, forward and still, downstream and calm, because what erosion teaches is that everything changes, everything moves, but nothing is truly lost, not even you. You are part of this story. You are part of the mountains and the rivers and the sand. You carry within you the same patience, the same softness strength. So, sleep now. Rest in the current of time, and let yourself be carried gently by the river of dreams. The wind does not shout, it does not crush or crack like a glacier, nor does it tumble stones like rivers in flood. It whispers, and yet, over time, even whispers can shape the world as you settle deeper into rest. Imagine the gentlest breeze brushing across the surface of a stone. It seems harmless, just air, just motion. But over years, decades, and centuries, that breeze becomes a sculptor. One that never tires, never stops, and never forgets its path. Wind erosion, or aeolian erosion, is among the quietest forces in geology, and yet its signature is unmistakable, especially in places where water is scarce, in deserts and dry plains where rain is rare and vegetation thin. Wind steps forward as the artist of the land. The process begins with the finest particles, dust, silt, and grains of sand. These are lifted by the wind and carried into the air, dancing across the sky in wide arcs. Some particles are swept away entirely, rising high into the atmosphere and traveling thousands of kilometers. Others move in small hops and skips along the ground, a process known as saltation. It is not violent. It is rhythm, grain after grain, hop after hop, nudging the land into new shapes. Where wind finds stone, it begins to wear it down, not all at once, but persistently. It picks up grains and flings them forward, using them like tiny chisels. Over centuries, rock faces are polished, carved, and sculpted into smooth curves and sharp ridges. This sandblasting effect is especially visible in desert landscapes, where strange and beautiful shapes rise from the dust, perches, hoodoos, and mushroom rocks, each one a monument to the whispering persistence of air. Wind erosion works in two primary ways: deflation and abrasion. Deflation removes loose particles from the surface, lowering the ground and sometimes creating shallow depressions. These hollowed areas are known as blowouts. Abrasion, on the other hand, is the wearing away of rock by wind-driven sand. It is how sculptures are made in stone, with no chisel in sight. And yet, wind is not only a carver, it is also a builder. Just as it removes, it also deposits. Sand, carried by air, comes to rest in sheltered spots, against rocks, near vegetation, or where the wind simply tires. Over time, these accumulations grow into dunes, vast and ever-shifting. Close your eyes and imagine a sea of sand. The dunes roll like waves, frozen mid-crest. Their ridges are sharp. Their surfaces ripple with delicate patterns, etched by the breeze. By day, they glow golden. By night, silver under moonlight. But, even in their stillness, they move. Wind pushes them slowly across the desert, grain by grain. Some dunes migrate. Others rise tall and sleep in place for generations. They are landscapes made of motion. There are many kinds of dunes: Barkin, parabolic, star, and savage, shaped by the direction and strength of the wind, by how much sand is present, and by what obstacles lie in its path. In this way, the wind writes its own language on the land, with curves and ridges as its letters. Even beyond deserts, the work of wind continues. Coastal cliffs are shaped by ocean breezes that carry salt and sand. Dry agricultural fields, left bare, may lose topsoil to wind. Erosion of fragile layer of life, swept away by carelessness. That is why, in farming regions, windbreaks of trees or shrubs are planted. Not just for beauty, but to shield the land from loss. In some places, wind brings gifts from afar. The lowest plains of China, Europe, and the American Midwest are built from wind-blown dust, fine silt carried over great distances and deposited in thick layers. These soils are incredibly fertile, born of ancient winds and glacial grinding. Where once there was nothing but dust in the air, now wheat and rice and corn grow in abundance. Wind, then, is not only a taker, it is a giver. It removes and reshapes, but it also delivers, layers, and softens. A dual role played with infinite patience. And within this softness is a lesson that change does not have to roar, that transformation can come on the back of the breeze, that what is persistent, though gentle, can still be powerful. As you breathe tonight, think of the wind moving over the land. Think of dunes shifting in the moonlight, of dust rising and falling like breath, of stones slowly smoothing beneath a constant caress. The world is reshaping itself as you sleep, but not in haste, in grace. Your own breath is like the wind. It comes and goes, it lifts and settles, and as it moves through you, it reshapes your thoughts, your feelings, your rest. Let it continue its rhythm. Let it carry you to sleep like sand through the sky, soft, unhurried, weightless. Because the wind never rushes, it only continues, and in that whisper, the earth becomes new again. While the surface of the earth is busy with the winds and rains and rivers that shape it from above, a quieter story unfolds below your feet. It is a story hidden in the dark, in the silence of stone and the damp of ancient caverns. Here, deep beneath the surface, erosion takes on another, formless, visible, but no less powerful. Subsurface erosion is the hidden half of the Earth's sculpting, where surface erosion wears away the land through the touch of wind or water. The underground processes work like secret hands, gently hollowing out the earth from within. It begins with water, always water. When rain falls on the land, some of it rushes away in rivers, some soaks into the soil, and some dives deeper still, sinking through layers of rock and sand. As it travels, this water picks up a bit of acidity, often from carbon dioxide in the air or soil, transforming into a very weak carbonic acid. It is so gentle you could drink it. But given time, this quiet acid becomes a sculptor, particularly in areas made of limestone, gypsum, or other soluble rocks. Groundwater begins to dissolve the stone, tiny crevices widen, fissures stretch, drops become trickles, trickles become underground rivers, and slowly, silently, vast networks of caves begin to form. This is how karst landscapes are born. Named for the karst plateau in Slovenia, these landscapes are a patchwork of sinkholes, disappearing streams, springs, and caverns. Above ground, they may look like any other field or forest, but below, they are hollowed with tunnels, channels, and voids. Earth that has quietly surrendered to the whispering work of water. In time, entire cave systems grow, often decorated with nature's quiet artistry. Water dripping from cave ceilings leaves behind minerals that form stalactite stone icicles reaching downward. From the floor, stalagmites rise to meet them. These formations grow slowly, just a few centimeters every 100 years, but they tell a tale of deep, uninterrupted time. these caves are not empty. Life finds a way, even here, in the dark, isolated from sunlight. Unique ecosystems evolve. Tiny, pale creatures, blind fish, shrimp without pigment, translucent insects live in silence. They navigate by touch and scent, guided by instincts honed over countless generations. These troglobites, as they're called, are specialized and sensitive, surviving in conditions most life cannot bear. Even the stone itself changes underground. In the slow motion of time, water carves out rooms large enough to swallow cathedrals. Whole rivers can vanish beneath the surface, flowing invisibly beneath hills and towns. Some reappear as springs, bubbling back to daylight. Others remain lost in the dark for centuries, and beneath volcanoes. Another form of underground erosion occurs: lava tubes. When lava flows in channels during an eruption, the outer layer can cool and harden, while molten rock continues to flow inside. Eventually, the molten rock drains away, leaving behind a hollow tunnel. These lava tubes snake through ancient volcanic fields, silent monuments to once fiery days. Subsurface erosion also gives rise to sinkholes, when underground voids collapse and the surface above suddenly drops. They can be small, like shallow bowls in a forest, or immense, swallowing streets or lakes in an instant. But even these dramatic events are part of a slow, persistent process that began with a single drop of water slipping through a crack, and, as with all erosion, what is taken away is not lost, it is simply moved. The materials dissolved underground are carried by water to springs, to rivers, to the ocean. There, they may help build coral reefs, nourish marine life, or become part of sediments that one day, far in the future, will turn to rock again. Everything is connected: the voids below, the rivers above, the hills that rise and the ground that falls, the air that flows through a cave mouth in the heat of day, carrying the cool breath of stone to the outside world. So tonight, as you lie in stillness, imagine the world beneath you, the soft drip of water echoing in a cavern unseen, the slow sculpting of stone, drop by drop, the silent glide of an eyeless fish through an underground stream. There is movement here, too. Not the roaring of wind or the crash of waves, but a deep, gentle shifting, the kind you can only feel when you are quiet enough to listen. It is a reminder that even in darkness there is life, even in silence there is change. Subsurface erosion is patient. It does not rush. It does not force. It moves with purpose, shaped by time and water and gravity's constant pull. It teaches us that what we cannot see still matters, that hidden places hold beauty, that unseen forces shape the world. Let those thoughts carry you now. Sink gently into the bed beneath you, like rain into the earth. Let your breath deepen. Let your muscles soften. Let your mind drift down into those quiet caves, into the slow heartbeat of the planet. Beneath the crust, the earth is always breathing. And tonight, so are you. Sleep well. If water is the artist that paints the valleys, and wind the calligrapher of deserts, then ice is the slow, heavy hand of time itself. There is a silence to glaciers that feels deeper than stillness. They move with a patience beyond human comprehension, so slowly that a day's progress might only be a few centimeters. And yet, over thousands of years, that ice can sculpt entire continents. It can flatten forests, carve out valleys, and leave behind monuments to cold and weight and deep time. Glacial erosion is the work of frozen water, but it is anything but still. Imagine a massive river made not of liquid, but of ice, thick, ancient, heavy beyond imagining. Glaciers form in places where snow accumulates over centuries, compressing into dense ice under its own weight. When enough pressure builds, that ice begins to flow outward and downward, pulled by gravity, like syrup across a tilted plate, tonally far, far slower. And yet, this sluggish motion is profoundly powerful. As a glacier moves, it scours the ground beneath it. Rocks frozen into its base act like sandpaper, grinding against the bedrock. This is abrasion, scratching, smoothing, reshaping. Where the ice meets cracks in the underlying rock, it can pull loose great chunks in a process known as plucking. Together, abrasion and plucking turn glaciers into slow-moving sculptors, erasing old landscapes and carving out new ones. Some of the most dramatic features on Earth were created this way: the deep, U-shaped valleys of Scandinavia and the Alps, the fjords of Norway, the vast plains of Canada was shaped by ice. Unlike rivers, which tend to cut narrow, V-shaped channels, glaciers carve wide and deep, pressing into the land with enormous force. When they retreat, they leave behind valleys so smooth and vast they seem unnatural, too perfect, too broad. But they are the handwriting of the glacier, etched across stone in places. Glaciers grind the rock so fine it becomes a pale, powdery dust called glacial flour. This dust gets carried into rivers and lakes, giving them their milky turquoise color, a soft, luminous blue that shimmers under the sun. It is the color of time. Glaciers also carry enormous amounts of debris. Rocks, soil, and sediment are gathered and moved across great distances. When the ice melts, these materials are left behind in mounds called moraines. Some are small ridges, others are massive hills stretching for miles. These are not chaotic deposits, they are the final strokes of a glacial masterpiece. And then there are erratic boulders, stranded far from their source, dropped in meadows or valleys where they do not belong. Carried by ice, they now sit quietly in fields, like forgotten memories of mountains long past. Glaciers even shape the sky's reflection. During the last ice age, vast ice sheets covered much of the northern hemisphere. As they moved, they scraped away soil, carved out basins, and filled them with meltwater. The Great Lakes of North America, the lakes of Finland, and thousands of others were formed this way. Today, they mirror the stars. But their shapes were drawn by frozen hands, and glaciers still move today. In places like Greenland, Antarctica, Alaska, and Himalayas, glaciers continue their slow migration. They are rivers of ancient snow, each layer recording a winter, a storm, a season. Scientists study these layers like tree rings, reading stories of past climates, volcanic eruptions, even human history. Ice, it turns out, remembers. But glaciers are more than memory. They are also changing as the planet warms. Many glaciers are retreating. Their edges melt, their mass shrinks. And with each drop of meltwater, a new path opens, a stream born of ice. These streams rush from the glacier's edge, carving canyons, feeding rivers, and giving life where before there was only cold. It is a bittersweet transformation. The beauty remains, but the weight of time is slipping. Yet even in loss, the glaciers remind us of something profound, that even the coldest, hardest elements of the earth are part of a cycle. Ice becomes water, water shapes land, land becomes home. Tonight, as you lie still beneath your blanket, think of the glaciers, slow and vast, pressing forward even in the dark. Let your breath slow to match their rhythm. Inhale, exhale, like the long, quiet breath of ice flowing downhill. You are warm now, safe from the cold. But the work of glaciers continues far away under the stars. Their silent touch is still shaping mountains, still feeding lakes, still leaving behind the quiet story of their passing. They do not rush, they do not rage, they simply move as they always have, with patience, with purpose. So let yourself drift now, cool.com, and weightless, like snow falling gently on ancient ice, like a memory resting on stone, like time itself, unhurried and at peace, that the earth will carry you. Where stone crumbles, life begins. It may seem strange to think of erosion this steady, silent, wearing away of the world as something that creates, but that is its quiet magic. As rocks break, as cliffs collapse, as rivers drag away sediment, the earth is not just losing, it is becoming something new. Each scar becomes a shelter, each fallen stone a seed of possibility. Imagine a high mountain ridge, cold and windswept, its summit scraped clean by centuries of wind and ice. Here, life is sparse. Lichen clings to the rock, its green-grey fingers etching faint circles of color. This humble organism is one of the first settlers of stone. With each season, it secretes mild acids that further break down the surface it lives on. In doing so, it helps turn rock into soil grain by grain. And once soil begins to gather, even if only in small pockets between cracks and ledges, new visitors arrive: mosses, tiny alpine flowers, grasses swaying in the wind, then insects, then birds. Life builds upon life in a chain of careful occupation, each link made possible by the slow release of minerals from the stone. Without erosion, without the slow dismantling of the mountainside, there would be no place to root, no nourishment to feed on, no shelter from the elements. This pattern repeats across the planet. Wherever erosion makes room, life moves in river, valleys, sediment, rich soils feed entire ecosystems. The nutrients released by the wearing down of mountains travel downstream, settling into lowlands and floodplains. These regions, flat, fertile, and dynamic, become wetlands, forests, grasslands. They buzz with insects, bloom with wildflowers, echo with birdsong, and all of it, every leaf, every feather owes its vitality to stone that once stood tall and unbroken. In the desert, wind-scoured rocks form quiet oases. In the shade of a boulder or within the curve of a dune, moisture clings a little longer. A crevice holds morning dew. A dip in the ground collects rain. Seeds blown by the wind find refuge in these gentle hollow-shaped, once again, by the whisper of erosion. Soon a cactus takes root. A beetle finds coolness. A lizard basks in filtered sun. Life exists, not despite the harshness, but because the harshness has made room, even in glacial terrain. Where ice has scraped valleys bare, something stirs. When the ice retreats, it leaves behind rocks, gravel, and new soil, barren at first, but brimming with potential. Pioneer species lichens again, mosses, hardy shrubs begin their patient work. They soften the land, enrich the ground. Slowly, the valleys come alive. Forests may return. Birds nest in the trees. Rivers, fed by glacial melt, carve the land and invite amphibians and fish. It is a renewal, born from the cold hands of erosion. And there are places even more hidden. Caves, formed by water's slow work underground, are not empty. They harbor specialized creatures, sightless fish, delicate spiders, translucent salamanders. These beings are ancient, evolved in darkness, adapted to silence. Their entire worlds are shaped by erosion's hollowing touch. Without that erosion, without the dissolution of rock, the collapse of stone, there would be no cave, no pool, no life within. So too in the soil beneath your feet. What was once mountain has become dust, rich with minerals. Insects burrow through it, roots divide it. Fungi lace through its spaces, building invisible networks that sustain trees and flowers. It is the ground of everything, every forest, every garden, every field, the quiet gift of time and erosion. This relationship is not one-sided. Life shapes erosion to plant roots wedge their way into cracks, expanding them, deepening them, accelerating the breakdown of rock. Trees hold soil in place, or release it in landslides when their roots fail. Burrowing animals stir the earth, mixing layers, exposing surfaces. Microorganisms release acids that dissolve minerals, helping break down even the hardest granite. Life and erosion are not separate, they are dancing partners, each leading in turn. Even humans are part of this cycle. We build cities on deltas shaped by river sediment. We farm the floodplains made fertile by erosion. We hike the canyons and marvel at cliffs that took millennia to form. We are drawn to these places not because they are polished or perfect, but because they feel alive, carved, earned in their irregular beauty. We see the world's long breath, yet we are also capable of speeding erosion unnaturally. Deforestation, overgrazing, mining, these can strip the land too fast, removing the delicate balance that took centuries to shape. Without roots, without shelter, soil blows away, slopes fail, rivers choke with sediment. What erosion builds slowly, carelessly, we can undo in moments. Still, the earth is resilient. Give it time, and it will find balance again. Tonight, as you lie still, imagine a seed falling into a crack in a rock. A breeze has brought it. Rain seeps in beside it. The seed swells, then splits. A root finds a crevice. A shoot reaches up. The rock resists, but cannot stop it. Years pass. The root thickens. The stone yields. Soil gathers. A tree grows. A bird nests. A forest begins. And it all started with a whisper of erosion. So as you drift deeper now, let yourself feel part of that slow rhythm, part of the earth's quiet rebuilding. You, too, are shaped by gentle forces, breath by breath, moment by moment. Like stone into soil, like ruin into refuge, you are becoming. Time is always moving, even when we do not feel it, and so is the land beneath us. Even the tallest mountains, the broadest plateaus, the deepest valleys, they are not fixed, they are not frozen. They change with the passing of centuries, the brushing of wind, the falling of rain. Erosion is the gentle engine of this transformation. It hums softly beneath our lives, always working, always reshaping. To understand this movement, we must step back, not just a few years, or even a few lifetimes, but millions of years. On a human scale, a mountain feels eternal. But if we let our minds drift into deep time, the land becomes fluid. It rises and falls. It is lifted and worn down. It is always in motion. Let us begin long ago, before the mountains we know even existed. At the bottom of ancient seas, layers of sediment slowly built up, sand, silt, and clay, settling over centuries, pressed down by the weight of water and time. These layers hardened into rock, quiet and hidden, until tectonic forces deep within the earth pushed them upward. The land folded, cracked, and lifted toward the sky. Mountains were born not in moments, but in long geologic sighs, and once they rose, erosion began its patient reply. Rainfall sculpted ridges, glaciers carved valleys, rivers wove their channels. For millions of years, these forces softened the edges of peaks, broke boulders into stones, wore stones into soil. Entire mountain ranges have risen and fallen like waves built up by the Earth's inner heat, worn down by its outer breath. The Appalachians, for example, were once towering peaks, sharp and young. Now, after hundreds of millions of years of erosion, they are gentle hills, tree-covered and rounded like the backs of sleeping animals. They are still majestic, but in a quieter way. Their power now lies in memory, in the depth of their age. Other mountains are still in their youth. The Himalayas rise rapidly, pushed upward by the grinding collision of tectonic plates. But even here, erosion has its place. Rivers like the Ganges and Brahmaputra carry away sediment from these towering heights every day, feeding deltas far away, building new land where once there was only sea. Erosion does not work alone. It walks beside time. As the climate changes, so does the speed and shape of erosion. During ice ages, glaciers scour the earth, stripping away soil, carving deep U-shaped valleys, leaving behind barren but beautiful scars. In warmer ages, rains become more frequent, rivers more active, floods more powerful. Each shift leaves a mark on the land. Fossils buried in sedimentary rock record the lives of creatures that once roamed hills that are now flatlands. In deserts, ancient lake beds crack open to reveal shells and bones from times when the climate was wetter, when water shaped the land instead of wind. Even canyons, with their steep, dramatic walls, are simply the result of time and patience. The Grand Canyon, one of Earth's most breathtaking landmarks, was not carved by a single event. It was etched, grain by grain, by the Colorado River over millions of years. It is a story told in layers, each stripe of rock a chapter in Earth's long book, and as erosion wears away one part of the Earth, it builds another. Sediment carried by rivers forms new land in distant places. Coastal deltas grow, beaches shift, underwater plains form from layers of dust and silt. Nothing is truly lost. Everything is simply transformed. Mountains become valleys. Valleys become seas. The past becomes the ground beneath our feet. And humans, to have joined this cycle, our cities, our roads, our farms, each alters the landscape, sometimes subtly, sometimes profoundly. We cut into hillsides, divert rivers, move earth with machines. We accelerate erosion in some places, slow it in others. And though our presence is brief on a geologic timescale, we leave our mark just as rain and wind do. Yet the earth is older than us, and it will continue to change long after us. New mountains will rise, old ones will disappear. Deserts will expand and retreat. Rivers will shift their course, and erosion, silent and steady, will guide it all unseen, unstoppable, endlessly patient. Tonight, as you lie still, let your imagination drift back across ages. Picture the land beneath your home and how it has changed. Perhaps once it was a seabed, or a forest, or a field of lava. Now it is your place, your view, your shelter. But it is not finished. The land is always becoming. Let that thought comfort you. The earth in motion, shaping and reshaping, never rushed, never still. You are part of that motion. A small but beautiful moment in the life of the planet. Breathe deeply now. Let your mind settle like sediment in a calm riverbed. Let your thoughts soften like old stone touched by rain. Feel the rhythm of time moving through you, as it does through every mountain, every valley, every quiet hill, and rest. You have traveled far tonight, not in miles, but in time, in texture, in the slow and steady rhythm of Earth's breath. You've wandered through towering mountains and watched them bow under the patient touch of wind and water. You've listened to the murmur of rivers as they pulled stone into sand and followed dust as it drifted across deserts, settling into silence. You've felt the cold weight of glaciers, the crackling hush of caves, the gentle tug of gravity reshaping everything it touches. Now it is time to pause, to rest beside the story we've told, for erosion, in the end, is not just about the wearing away of mountains. It is about renewal, transformation, a world in motion, not in chaos, but in deep harmony. The stone beneath your feet was once ash. The soil in your garden may have been part of a mountain. The sand between your toes once stood proud as a peak. Everything changes. Everything continues. And though we may not see it day to day, the land beneath us is breathing, slowly, deeply, in geologic time. And you are part of that. The minerals in your bones come from ancient seas. The water in your blood once flowed through mountains. With every breath you take in the remnants of trees, oceans, storms, you are shaped in quiet and invisible ways by the same forces that sculpt canyons and valleys. Even sleep is a kind of erosion of tension, of thought, of the sharp edges of the day. As you sink deeper into your pillow, the mind softens, worries crumble like cliffs under soft rain, breath slows, muscles yield, the day dissolves gently into night, and you begin to reshape yourself, restoring what was worn, rebuilding what was thinned. The world outside carries on. Somewhere, a glacier is inching forward, carving its memory into stone. A river is slipping over a bend, rounding its edges. Wind is whispering across the face of a lonely rock, humming its quiet lullaby. Far underground, water is exploring hidden channels, making new space where there once was none. And high above, mountains so strong, so still are, slowly, invisibly, saying goodbye to the sky, not with sorrow, but with grace, because in their yielding, they feed the valleys. In their falling, they give rise to life. Even the greatest things must learn to let go, and now, so can you. Let your breath flow like a stream, smooth and slow. Let your thoughts drift, like sediment settling at the bottom of a calm lake. Let the weight of your body melt into the bed beneath you, as if you were stone, weathered and warm beneath the sun. There is nothing to hold, nothing to do. The world is quiet now. The mountain sleeps, and so may you. Time will carry everything. Let it carry you, too. Good night, fellow traveler. Rest deeply. You are part of something beautiful, ancient, and still becoming. May your dreams be shaped gently, like valleys in spring rain. May your sleep be soft as silt, and may morning find you renewed like a river, ready to begin again. Sleep well,